He heard the engine first. The late Queen's Range Rover had been quiet for more than a year, but it was now thundering back to life in the Balmoral garage. But no one was supposed to drive it. No log, no royal approval, no permission. And when Sergeant Rake got closer, he saw that it wasn't simply starting. It was being handed to Camilla's son. That car wasn't simply a car. It had the Queen's last notebook, her maps, her smell, and her garments in it. And when they tried to load it in a trailer, Camilla told him to move out of the way. Thomas laughed and waved the papers in his face. The guard did something Balmoral hadn't seen in decades. He screamed. Firstly, before we show you how Princess Anne reacted and what secret was hidden in the glove box all along, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and turned on the bell icon. Please leave a comment letting us know where in the world you are watching from. It wasn't about the car, it was about the memory, and the one man who wouldn't let them take it away. The sound of early fall at Balmoral was different from London. It was softer and wilder. The breeze still carried pine and peat, and the air was so silent that only a place with memory could have it. Sergeant Lachlan Rake stood by the edge of the Royal Motor Court with a clipboard in one hand, and his sleeves rolled up halfway. His collar was straight, his boots were clean, but his mind had started to wander until he heard it, a low, unmistakable purr that flowed across the gravel. He stopped moving. The sound came back, this time closer and deeper than the modern fleet, and throatier than the normal runabouts that personnel use when they visit, heavier and older. Before it came into view, he turned. The old green Range Rover Defender came out from behind the hedgerow with a continuous rumble that you could feel in your ribs. It had a classic square frame, high clearance, and a special off-road guard still attached to the front. It rolled as if it knew where it had been and who it had belonged to. Rick's chest got tight. No one had used that car in almost a year, since the Queen died. It wasn't just any car. It was her car. She insisted on driving it herself when she was in Scotland, no matter what the weather was like. She would still drive it across the Highlands, along steep rock routes, and down to Glenmoo, even after Philip died. People at work joked that you could tell how she was feeling by the way she drove the Land Rover, but no one else had ever touched it, and no one was supposed to. After the funeral, Princess Anne gave a modest command that was informal but firm. It stays where she left it. Keys are sealed. Don't touch. Rees was there when the storage tag was put on the item. He had seen the keys put in the locked cabinet in the Balmoral service wing. He remembered it since he had locked the door himself. And yet, there it was. The engine was warm. The wheels were clean, and someone was driving. As it rolled into one of the maintenance bays, Rees stepped forward. A junior valet jumped out swiftly and started cleaning the side mirrors with a cloth that appeared way too pristine for the job. The sergeant didn't speak up. Who let that car go? The valet blinked. He was only 20, and his face was pale under the peaked cap. I was told to get it ready, sir. By whom? The boy paused for a moment, then leaned in a little and looked over his shoulder. Queen Consort's team said it's going to Windsor for her son. Rees didn't answer right away. He looked at the engine again. It was still idling softly, as if it hadn't forgotten what it was supposed to do, and was waiting for someone who no longer roamed these halls. He turned back to the valet and said in a calm voice, "Turn it off now." The valet did what he was told. When the engine stopped sputtering, the courtyard seemed to get colder. Rees didn't yell, curse, or point fingers. He just strolled back to the storage building where the locked cabinet was and typed in the access code. Because whatever this was, it wasn't normal, and it wasn't right. Rayak had always thought that silence was important. Not the formal type, not the kind where you stand outside Buckingham Palace, but the actual kind, the sort that followed the Queen in her Defender over the foggy hills of the Highlands. It was the quiet of someone who didn't need to say they were there, someone who was just there. He remembered the first time he saw her driving. There was no entourage or security escort, just a wool scarf tied around her chin, 2 puppies hopping in the back seat, and a gloved hand holding the wheel like she was born in the seat. When she saw him on the path to the stables, she waved quickly and then drove on. No problems, no show, only control, and now her Defender was parked in the bay like any other car, with the doors open and the glass being cleaned like it was a staff pool car on rotation. Reiki went into the garage and located the main mechanic. An older guy named Foster had been laid to rest. He had worked at the castle longer than most of the bricks. "She's on the list?" Reiki asked. Foster looked up from a clipboard with a worried look on his face. "Not on mine, but I was told to have it ready for pickup this afternoon." "By whom?" Valet lead said it came from Windsor. Something about moving the family to a new home. Foster turned the page. Thomas Parker BS said he would be taking possession. Personal transport. Reich squinted his eyes. With what paperwork? Foster shrugged a little. I didn't see it, but the boy who drove it in had the key. He paused, then added quietly, it's strange that key has been in sealed storage since September of last year. I saw the log myself when we archived Her Majesty's effects. Someone would have had to request access to the cabinet, which requires 2 signatures and a witness, and there's no request form in the system. I checked when the valet brought it this morning. Nothing logged, nothing filed. It's like the key just appeared. Reich felt something chilly settle in his stomach. Not having paperwork to get into the cabinet didn't only break the rules, it also hinted that someone with enough power had just skipped them altogether. Reich didn't answer. He walked past the Defender again, this time with his hands behind his back, and halted at the back. It still had the old Balmoral sticker on it, just above the tow hitch. There was no new plate or logistics notation, only the small scratch on the boot latch that the Queen had refused to buff out. She felt it made the car seem more real. He took his encrypted tablet out of his duty belt and accessed the secure channel that was directly connected to Princess Anne's, typed carefully and clearly. The Green Defender is in motion and is assigned to TPB. No record of the order. Ask for help. He looked at the screen. Minutes went by. Then the answer came. Hold the line. She will come. No more explanation, no more clarity, and no timestamp. Reich read it twice. He then slid the tablet back into his belt, walked 3 steps toward the car, and stood still, not at attention, not blocking, but there between the car and the exit. No one was going to take that Range Rover anyplace until someone with real authority told him to do something else. The mist had burned off by midday, and the pale Highland light cast long shadows on the gravel court. Birds flew back and forth between the stone chimneys. In the bottom barns, the horses stamped calmly. A silver trailer appeared down the steep road of the estate. It was the kind that could move old automobiles without leaving a scratch. Sergeant Lachlan Reich stayed still. He was still standing in the same spot he had been for the last 40 minutes, 2 meters from the Defender's front left fender, arms at his sides, and face unreadable. He had seen those plates on the trailer previously. Not obvious, not military. Rented, no royal transit tags, no crown connection, just the kind of privacy someone employs when they don't want to be asked questions. The trailer came to a stop. Thomas Parker BS got out of the passenger side, looking as cool as usual. He had a fashionable jacket, polished boots, and a clipboard tucked under one arm like it was just another Thursday at the estate. When he spotted Reek, he smiled. "Sergeant," he said, as if he were meeting an old friend. "Isn't it a nice day to take care of some inheritance?" Reek didn't say anything. Thomas walked up casually and looked over the Defender's hood. "She still smells like mothballs and gas. I remember this old thing. When I was a teenager, I took it across the back trails with Mom. She almost flipped it going downhill." He laughed and kept saying that the Queen would have killed her if she had dented it. "It's funny how things change. Now it's just sitting here collecting dust when it could be useful." He ran his fingers over the doorframe as if he owned it. "Mom said the old girl left some personal things inside. Nothing important, just maps and journals and estate stuff. We'll get rid of those, of course. I can't have old hiking notes lying around when I'm using it for country events." Reich's jaw got tense. So they already knew what was in the glove compartment. This wasn't a chance attack, it was planned. Reich said estate nonsense again, slowly. Thomas got the hint and backed down a little. "Well, I'm sure it's sentimental, but it's not really important anymore, is it?" Reich stayed still. The trailer driver started to lower the loading ramp behind them. A valet came out of the garage on the other side, carrying the ignition fob like a waiter would handle a bottle of old wine. Without thinking twice, Thomas accepted it. He said, "Thanks for the prep. Camilla's instructions were pretty clear. She told me to bring it back to Windsor today. I might use it for the photo op next week." That was when Reich made his move. It was only one step, but it was enough to put his body right between the truck and the trailer's open mouth. Thomas raised one eyebrow. "Is something wrong? That car is not allowed to leave these grounds." Thomas blinked, as if he hadn't heard what was said. "Excuse me." Reich's voice stayed the same. "Princess Anne verbally sealed that Defender after the funeral. Its status is still that of static memorial equipment. There is no work order, no chain of custody, and no transfer rights." Thomas laughed a little, looking down on him. "Sergeant, I really appreciate the formality, but this is family business. The Queen is gone, and the car isn't doing much good sitting in a garage." Reich didn't move. "It's not just a car." Thomas's smile dimmed a little. "Listen, I have permission. Camilla signed off on it herself. You can log it however you want, but don't get in the way." He tried to step around the hood, but before his foot struck the gravel, he heard another voice coming from behind him in the archway. "Don't waste your breath, Thomas. It's just ceremonial fuss." Camilla stood under the colonnade with her hands folded in gloves and an unreadable look on her face. She grinned after looking at the defender, and then at Reich. "Let the man do his job. After that, we'll show him what real power looks like." Camilla walked across the gravel like someone who had just come to approve flowers at a funeral she hadn't planned. One hand was gloved and the other was naked, and they were always careful. At first, she didn't look at the car. Her gaze moved over the crowd, the ramp, the trailer, and the quiet standoff between her son and the Queen's Guard. "Thomas," she continued in a calm voice, "is there a reason Sergeant Reich is blocking my son's car?" Reich didn't say anything. Thomas cleared his throat. "We have the paperwork. He's just being careful." Camilla turned all the way around to face the defender. Finally, she looked at it. Just a quick look, not lengthy, to make sure it was there. Then returned to Reich. "Sergeant, I appreciate your hard work, but I gave my permission for this transfer for personal use." "It was never a family car," Reich said calmly. "It was private property that only Her Majesty used. After she died, Princess Anne ordered it to be kept as is, sealed and still. That verbal order was written down and carried out." Camilla smiled a little, but not in a nice way. "I know how Anne feels, but she is not the Queen. Seg Charles is, and I act in his name and with his full trust, that if a car sits in a garage for too long, it stops being sacred, it becomes useless." Reich's voice got a little lower. "That impractical vehicle took Her Majesty to 3 generations of military reviews and the last 4 years of personal engagement. It is in the royal registry and is not meant to be moved." Camilla turned her head. "And yet it was cleaned, unlocked, and ready to go. So unless that happened by divine intervention, I'd say someone knew the right authority had spoken." She pointed to the clipboard that Thomas was holding. "Signed this morning. Everything is in order." Reich moved a little closer, slowly. "I've seen the clipboard, Mom, but I haven't seen a single transfer authorization that has the initials of the person who sealed it." "You're quoting protocol. I'm honoring memory," Camilla said, her voice getting sharper. "You're getting in the way of private logistics. That's way above your pay grade." "No, Mom," he responded in a low voice. "That's exactly what I get paid." Thomas spoke something quietly to himself. Camilla moved closer. "If this keeps up, I'll put your name on a list at Windsor." Reich didn't blink. "Then flag it. But make sure your report has the sealed inventory list and the key cabinet log, both of which were signed, dated, and not touched until this morning." She stopped moving for a second. That was enough. Then she smiled over her shoulder and turned, as if the issue had been resolved. "Don't waste your breath on him," she said. "Thomas. He'll be rotated out next week. Then it'll move." Reich saw her go away down the colonnade and knew for sure that she wasn't done. But he wasn't either. The stables, the hallways, and even the woods after dusk weren't the quietest sections of Balmoral. They were the talks that didn't become louder. Reese strolled around the long gravel edge of the closed garage, checking the locks again. Not because he worried someone would break them, but because he required the rhythm. Clip, pause, clip, pause. The sound of footsteps helped him think. He took the encrypted tablet off his belt, opened the private channel, and typed in the same contact he had marked before. This time he didn't write. He made a call. 2 rings. Then a voice, a woman's, short and hard to understand. Not Anne, but close enough to be important. "Sergeant, I need to know more," Reese stated as he looked over the hills outside the courtyard. "The Green Defender has been turned on and is ready to be sent to Windsor by Camilla's office. I think she's giving it to her son." "Shut up. Time is running out. I need to know if the seal was informal or absolute," Reese said. "Not all verbal holds make it to the archive." Anne herself answered this time. He knew her voice right away. "Reese, Sergeant," she said. He stood up straighter. "Mom, my mother took that car out of rotation 2 weeks before she died, not by my order, but by hers." Reese didn't say anything. She put her secret Highland journal in the glove box, folded it herself, and left the compartment open. Anne's voice was steady, but something below it wasn't. There were also 2 field maps next to them that showed her walking routes, estate notes, and terrain transitions that she never got to publish. "I found them when I was told to finish Balmoral's personal archive." The fob was put back in the storage box. Her last instructions were clear. "This one stays. It belongs to the place." Rake shut his eyes. The Defender was more than simply a car. It was a boat. The Queen didn't want it kept as a memory. She had kept herself inside it, Anne added softly. If they move it, they move the last trace of her. I get it, Mom. There was a pause, and then a subdued answer. Do you? I do now. Reek felt the chills settle in his bones. Not from the wind, but from the weight of something he had just understood he was guarding. Anne didn't provide an order, did not give him any instructions. She didn't have to. She hung up the phone and left him alone, knowing that the most powerful lady in the country had put part of her legacy in a piece of metal, rubber, and glass, and that it was now his task to preserve it from becoming someone else's memento. The trailer was back, and this time the ramp was already down and the engine was running. The driver didn't look up or say anything. He moved like someone who had been told this would be quick, in and out, with no problems. Thomas Parker Bowles came back wearing a gray sport coat and sunglasses. He had a paper folder that was thicker than before, the kind of folder people carry about to make it look like they need it. 2 assistants followed him. Although they weren't Balmoral personnel, they were borrowed from Windsor. They moved quickly. 1 person left to get the hydraulic lift ready. The other person walked up to the defender with a scanner in hand. Whoa, Reek remarked as he stepped forward. No more access. The aide looked up, not sure what to do. We're just scanning VIN for stock. I said no access. Thomas strolled in with the calm demeanor of someone who is used to charming people into understanding each other. Sergeant, he said, I get the attachment. I really do. But let's not make this last too long. It's just a car. A nice one, but still just a car. And today that car is coming with me. No, Reek responded with no emotion. It's not. Thomas let out a big sigh. We're good to go. My mom signed every paper in here. He opened the folder and held it out to Reek like a winning hand. This is the permission. The personal assignment is all logged. Reek didn't accept it. I don't need your paperwork. You're blocking royal transportation. I'm protecting a sealed legacy asset, and that's not your decision. Yes, it is, Reek answered, his voice raising for the first time. There was no more movement in the courtyard. The helpers looked up. The valet who was cleaning close didn't see him drop his rag. It felt like even the birds stopped talking for a time. Thomas blinked. Excuse me, you can't take away the last thing she loved, Reek remarked loudly and firmly. Not for looks, not for access, and not for a picture op. Before Thomas could say anything, he heard Camilla's voice behind the pillar. Sergeant Reek, she yelled, are you yelling at my son? No, Mom, Reek murmured as he turned. I am yelling at a breach of dignity. Her heels made a loud sound as she crossed the court. You are being disobedient. You are remembering. You are speaking out of turn. Reek stood in front of the defender, square and still. I belong between stealing and remembering. That car stays. Camilla squinted. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, he said. You are. Because you thought no one would stop you. Thomas gazed back and forth between them, suddenly scared. This wasn't how he thought it would go. Camilla lifted her chin. You've made your point, she said, turning quickly on her heel. Let's see how long it lasts. But Reek didn't see her leave. He was looking at the road because someone else was coming. This time, the sound of tires on gravel was different. Not rushed, not flashy, simply quiet, like the car had been driving for hours and didn't want anyone to know it had gotten there. A black SUV slowly turned into the courtyard. No signs, no escort. The kind of arrival that didn't belong to the king or the show, but to someone who knew the rules and when to break them. Princess Anne came out. There was no hoopla or assistance with her. She was alone, wearing a fitted field coat, dark pants, and riding boots that still had dirt on them from the stable. She looked at the defender, then the trailer, and then the standoff. She didn't say anything. Camilla was the first to see her. She cried out, Anne, and smoothed her coat as if that would help. I didn't think you would be up this week. Anne didn't say anything. She kept on walking. Regrick took a step back, not because he was afraid, but because he wanted to be clear. This was her place now. Thomas stepped forward with a shaky hand. We were just, well, it's really a misunderstanding, Regrick said under his breath. Anne raised her hand. There was silence again. She walked up to the defender, went around it once, and then stopped at the driver's door. This wasn't on the Windsor manifest, she said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. Camilla made herself smile. It was at the last minute. Thomas needed something he was used to for a media push coming up. We thought a personal connection would help. Anne turned around slowly. That's not something, she responded, her voice as icy as the Scottish air. That's her silence, and it will stay there. Camilla blinked. You can't really think. Don't, Anne said sharply. Don't start with belief. We're past belief. We're in memory now, and memory doesn't belong to those who change it. Thomas looked like he was going to say something again, but Anne's stare stopped him. She glanced at Rake. Mom, "Do you need confirmation?" he questioned softly. "No, Mom. Do what you were taught." He nodded once. Camilla stepped forward, hoping that her posture would help her regain control. "This isn't the way things are supposed to be done. This is how you feel. Charles will hear about this." Anne's eyes stayed on Rake. "Okay." She let him do it. And with that, she went by all of them, and right to the stables, as if nothing else needed to be said, because it didn't. She didn't talk like a sister or a queen. She talked like the only person left who knew how to protect the things their mother never asked them to protect. The Range Rover rolled back into the garage with its engine off and in neutral gear. It was clear that it was there. Sergeant Lachlan Rake went next to it with one hand resting lightly on the edge of the driver's door. He didn't have to drive it. The two younger guards who were assisting to steer the wheels already knew. Everyone had to relocate without making any noise. No commands, no talking, no ceremony, just respect. Rake stepped back when the Defender stopped in its original bay, the one where the Queen had left it the summer before she died. He pulled the ignition key out of his pocket, put it in the dash, and turned on the system just long enough to register the shutdown sequence. After that, he turned it off totally. No last rev, no goodbye, just silence. He reached into the back compartment and got the security chain. It was the identical one used to close the vaults during ceremonies. It was made of polished, old brass, and had a single plate that said Private Order, Class Memorial. He put it through the door handles once, locked the magnetic clasp, and then touched his thumb against the biometric pad on the wall panel. A green light flickered on and off. With a low, satisfying clang, the lock clicked into place. Done. Rake stayed there for a little while longer. He took out a little laminated tag from his shirt pocket. The Princess Royal wrote this simple script herself. He folded it up after the Queen died, put it in a weatherproof casing, and glued it to the Defender's steering wheel using clear archival tape. It said, "Do not disturb legacy." The trailer was already leaving outside. Thomas stood next to it with his arms crossed and his sunglasses in his hand. His face was unreadable. He didn't say anything. There was nothing further to say. Camilla had not come back. She was observing from the archway, where she was half hidden by the pillar. Her lips were narrow, and her arms were crossed. She didn't say anything. She didn't come over, and no one asked her to. Rake left the garage and walked by Thomas without stopping. "This wasn't supposed to be dramatic," Thomas said under his breath. Rake didn't give him a look. "Then you shouldn't have touched her keys." He kept walking, each step well-planned and exact. Camilla didn't say anything behind him. It wasn't because she had lost. It was because she had been left out. That was a lot worse in her world. Princess Anne was already vanishing into the stables ahead, her outline highlighted by the golden light of the sun. She hadn't stayed to say thank you or offer comfort or punishment, since that wasn't the goal. The point had been made, and now the Defender was sitting quietly again, just where the Queen had left it. That night, the castle went to bed early. The stables were silent. The hills beyond Balmoral rolled into darkness, their outlines softened by low fog, and the silence that came after a fight that no one wanted to identify. The staff went back to their rooms. The radios didn't work, but there was still one person inside the Royal Motor Court. Just after midnight, Sergeant Lachlan Rake walked through the side door of the garage with a flashlight that was turned off. The light wasn't necessary for him. He knew this property better than his own flat in Edinburgh. He remembered every echo, every oil stain, and every creak of wood above the sealed bays. They were part of the job, but they felt heavier tonight. He went up to the Defender without making a sound. In the dark, it didn't look like a car or even property. It just looked like a presence. The kind that stays with you after someone leaves, but before their memory becomes a myth. He grabbed the chain but didn't unlock it. Instead, he leaned forward and looked through the glass, which was the glove compartment. He thought about it for a moment, then opened the driver's door just a little and reached inside. With the lightest touch, it opened. Inside was a nicely folded square of trademarked fabric, royal tartan, a scarf that belonged to the Queen, and a set of clipped reading glasses, and a leather-bound notepad with no crest. It's just a simple elastic loop that keeps it sealed. There were 2 folded ordnance survey maps behind it, with handwritten notes in the margins about trail markers, wildlife sightings, and dates written in her neat style. Glenmuick, September 14th. The fog was gone by noon. Path to Lochnaga. Philip's favorite requires fixing. A single black and white snapshot, wrapped in tissue paper and tucked away at the far back. The Queen, who was much younger, stood next to the Defender with Philip. Both of them were muddy and laughing. Rikik looked at it for a long time. This wasn't just a memory. It showed that she had lived beyond the crown and her duty, and that she had chosen this area, this car, and these hills as the best version of herself. He didn't open the notepad, touch the scarf, or even take a deep breath. He slowly and respectfully closed the compartment. Then he walked back, locked the door again, and checked the lock one last time. Not because he didn't trust it, but because she would have. A lone fox crossed the gravel walk outside and disappeared into the fog. And somewhere in the garage, the last breath of her lavender scent, which was still stuck deep in the Defender's upholstery, hung in the air like something that wasn't quite done. Ryuk stayed there for another minute before turning around and leaving the automobile and the woman it was carrying to rest in silence, just as she had decided.